So I'm going to give a really brief overview of what Care Conversations is, but I'm not going to dwell too much on that. What I'm mostly going to try and talk about today is the methods that I use at different stages in the process to bring the methodology to life. Even though I've done loads and loads of workshops and presentations now, I'm terrible with time management. And when I did this presentation, thanks for the beep, I somehow had the crazy idea that we could try some of these things out today so you could see it in practice. That's obviously, that would have taken 3 times as long. So we're not going to do that, but sometimes it might be a bit strange with what it says on the screen. So yeah, Care Conversations is a quality assurance program for public care services, but it's trying to be a different way of doing quality assurance that involves people working together at a grassroots level rather than having a top-down imposition of quality standards. So it's about working with people in services to create the change that they want to see, not the change that some sort of quality framework thinks needs to happen. It's focused on what matters to people and improving people's experiences. And as I said, I'm trying to do this kind of more radical approach of bringing people together in equal partnership and exploring ways for them to take action together to create positive change. The kind of methodology that I use for Care Conversations is a step-by-step process called experience-based co-design. And all that experience-based co-design means is that people with experiences of the service, and that means service users, family members, frontline staff, managers, design changes to the service in order to improve their experiences of the service. And it's comes from, as Nick said, it comes from the world of health, and it's quite tried and tested, been proven to empower staff and service users to work together. The process is focused on bringing people together on different occasions to discover as much as possible about each other's experiences of the service and then work together to make changes to the service so that it provides them with the best possible experiences. It's called Care Conversations because its starting point is face-to-face conversations with people about what really matters to them, about their experiences of using and delivering the service, and about their hopes and priorities for change. And those conversations are filmed or they're audio recorded to create a resource that can be used in the next stage of the process, which is people coming together to talk in groups. So you start with talking to people one-to-one, and then you bring all those people that you talk to one-to-one into groups in a series of feedback events in which you share people's stories and feedback back to them as a group. And what I usually do is I make a film from all the interviews that I've done, so that people can get a collective understanding of what people are experiencing in that service and what they can identify shared experiences and shared priorities for change. So in these group sessions, I facilitate them so that people work together in dialogue in order to listen to and learn from each other's experiences and feedback, to start to identify shared hopes, ideas and priorities for improving the service, and then to narrow down their ideas to the 3 or 4 top priorities for improving the service, and that becomes the core focus of the project in that service. And then beyond this point, anyone who wants to carry on with it is invited to join the services. When I say service, I'm usually talking about like a care home or an extra care scheme or something like that. The official Care Conversations action group for that service. And then they meet every couple of months to co-design solutions focused on their 3 priorities for change. Right. So this is the process in detail. Obviously recruiting staff members, service users and family carers into the project. I then carry out these care conversations with service users and family carers. And those are in-depth conversations, usually about an hour long. There's sort of qualitative interviews with open questions about what's important to them and about their experiences of the service. I then do a group session with staff members where I talk to them about what matters to them, their experiences and their ideas for improving the service from their perspective. And at the end of that session, they come up with about 6 priorities for change. Once I've done the interviews with service users and family members, I have to analyse that interview data and edit it into a feedback film. Then I screen that feedback film at a screening event, which the service users and family carers that took part in it are invited to, and we have a dialogue about the feedback in the film, and they identify their priorities for change. And then there's a joint event where the staff that came to their session, the service users and family members, all come together in one big group. We watch the film a second time. We explore the different priorities that have been identified by service users and staff, and then they decide on their final priorities and form the action groups out of those. What am I doing? Oh yeah, okay. So I was going to take each section of that and just explain what I actually do in those parts of the process. So the care conversations with service users and family members, as I said, it's an in-depth interview, usually between 45 minutes to an hour. And I ask open questions like, what matters to you? What makes you glad to live here and have care and support from Pobl? Is there anything you find frustrating or difficult about living here and having care and support from Pobl? And I just record what people say in response to that. And then another part of the interview is, before the interview, I give them a list of topics relating to different experiences they might be having in that service. And they choose the 2 or 3 topics that they feel most strongly about. That they have a story, the ones that they have a story to tell. And then in the interview, they tell me about those, and I ask them, what's your experience of, if they've chosen making decisions in this service? How do you feel? If it's a negative experience, I ask them, what would a positive version of that experience look like? Right, skip this bit because I'm not going to do it. Then I analyse the interview data that I've got and edit the film together. So I edit the film around the recurring themes about what matters to people. So I look at what people have said when I've asked them what's important to you. And in my analysis, I express those themes as first-person statements. So an example would be, staff members connect with me as a person. I also identify, when I'm editing the film, the recurring experience touch points. So these are the moments that people felt to be significant in their overall experience of the service. Let's skip that bit. Okay, so at the screening event, when I show the film, I start with the section on what matters to people, and you have the feedback from people about what's important to them, and then the first person's statement that's come out of that. So, for example, I'm consistently supported by people I'm familiar and comfortable with. And I get the participants in the workshop to just rate that on a scale of how well that reflects their experiences of the service. And then the other thing that I do in that screening event is make an experience map with people where we listen to the feedback about the experience touch points, and then we arrange them on the wall to see which are high points and which are low points. So I have them all written up on coloured paper along the wall at the same height, and I ask people to move them up or down depending on whether that experience is a good experience for them, or as good as it could be, or whether they'd like it to be better, in which case they move it down. And then these statements about what matters to them and the experience map is used to identify priorities for change. So usually they choose a couple of statements about what's important to them, and then that would be focusing on how can we make this sentence more true? What can we do to make this sentence more true? With the experience map, if they chose a particular experience that they were having, say making decisions, we'd be focusing on how can we make this a better experience for you? How can we give you better experiences of making decisions? Okay. At the joint feedback event, all the different priorities that have been shared in the identified in the previous event, it's kind of like the World Cafe thing where they're each on a different table, and I get people to go to the one that they're most interested in talking about. And then I get them to work in small groups around that priority to come up with like a manifesto of ideas. So answering the question, what could be done to make your experiences of this better, or what needs to happen to make this sentence more true. And then they kind of do an election thing where they pitch their manifesto for change to the rest of the group, and then everyone votes on a final 3. And then with the action groups taking those 3 forward, each session is focused on one of the priorities. And generally what happens in a session, we look at the ideas that were in the manifesto, and then I work with them to come up with additional ideas for actions that could be taken. We sort and prioritize those ideas using a criteria matrix. Should I don't know.
30 seconds.
Okay. And then with the top ideas that come out of that, I do a check for consensus. And if necessary, if there isn't consensus in the room about whether that's a good idea or something we want to do, I use consensus decision making to explore it. And I was going to go on to talk about consensus decision making, but I probably don't have time. So
it could be a session in itself.
Yeah. So that's me. Okay.
Thank you.